Hey everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. I'm Justin, and I believe in God, so none of this shit is about to happen to me.
Hey, I'm Nico, and I don't, but all of this shit probably would still happen to me anyway.
And I'm Dan, the babysitter.
And we are here today to discuss The Omen. That's right, the one from 1976. This was directed by Richard Donner, starring Gregory Peck as Robert Thorne, Lee Remick as Catherine Thorne, Harvey Stevens as Damien, and David Warner as Keith Jennings. So we open with Robert Thorne, an American ambassador, and his wife, Catherine, in an Italian hospital. The wife has just given birth to a baby boy, but the local chaplain has informed him his baby has died. Luckily, though, another boy was born on the same day and his mother has died. So the chaplain basically convinces Robert to take the son as his own. However, Robert doesn't tell his wife because his wife was very insistent on having her own baby. 5 years later, Robert becomes the American ambassador to London. So he moves to England with his wife and their son, Damien. Nico, what happens after?
So at Damien's 5th birthday, shit gets all kind of fucked. His nanny hangs herself during his birthday, loudly announcing, "This is all for you," before jumping to her death. And she's replaced by a mysterious new nanny. Robert is then confronted by a priest, Father Brennan, who tells him that Damien is actually the Antichrist. This goes over well. He tells Robert that he needs to meet up with Bugenhagen?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Either one is authentic, trust me.
Yeah. He needs to meet up with Captain B-Dog in Megiddo for more information. Robert doesn't believe him at first, but priest predictions about all this bad shit start to come true. And additionally, the priest himself is killed in a very gruesome accident. Meanwhile, Keith Jennings, a local... Wasn't that the Jeopardy guy? That was Ken Jennings. God. Wow. Keith Jennings, a local photographer, meets with Robert and explains that his photographs have shown the gruesome deaths of people, such as Damien's former nanny and the priest, and that there's something going on here. The pair then travel to Italy, where they learn that the hospital Damien was born at has burned to the ground. You might call that a bad omen. They visit a ruined graveyard and find that Damien's mother was some form of dog jackal thing. Fun.
Well, this sounds bad, but I'm sure it turns around. Dan, take us home.
Definitely. So things take a turn for the better. And Robert's wife is murdered by the new nanny. but he and Keith carry on to Megiddo, where they meet up with Bugenhagen. So B-Dog gives Robert the set of daggers that he must use in a church to kill Damien. But, Robert is pretty loath to kill a child, let alone his own, sort of his own. This changes when Keith is decapitated, and Robert decides that he's got to put a stop to things.
My man said heads up.
No. So Robert heads back home, fights and stabs the nanny, and drags Damien to his car and heads to church. Unfortunately, in doing so, he also attracts the attention of the local fuzz. Robert takes Damien inside the church and draws the first dagger, but hesitates for a moment, asking God to forgive him. This gives the cops the chance to arrive and kill him. So now the movie ends at the funeral of Damien's parents as the child stands with the President of the United States. The camera zooms in on Damien and he smiles, diabolically, at the audience. The end.
Well, we got some things to talk about here, so let's go ahead and get started, shall we? First off, let's take this movie's look. Nico, how does this movie look?
It looks fine. I mean, it's a movie that's in Britain in the 70s, and it looks like Britain in the 70s. This is not a movie that is rife with rich cinematography. There's a couple shots that are really cleverly done with some mirrors that I really like, but the set pieces are fine. I don't think the visuals are why you watch this movie, though. Not that they're bad, they're just nothing to write home to about, and, that's fine.
Dan, what's your takeaway here?
I, for the most part, agree. I think it's a very well shot and good looking film, but there's nothing outstanding about it. There's not a whole lot of special effects or anything in there. I mean, maybe a couple lightning strikes and things during a big storm.
Yeah.
But there's not any crazy monsters or anything that could either look good or opposite and look really bad. like Nico said, it looks like a film that was made in the 70s, about the 70s, in the 70s in Britain.
Mm-hmm. I'm largely in agreement. I don't think this is something where the visuals are really necessarily anything to like shout from the rooftops about. One thing I did like was there were times where the camera kind of adopted almost kind of like a weird kind of like fisheye perspective or something like that. It happened once or twice. I liked that. I thought it was pretty cool. I also kind of liked there being some kind of really weird things. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but when the priest, the first priest, was trying to run inside the church, there was actually some writing about God in like Arabic. I don't know if anyone caught that.
I did not.
That was pretty interesting. So there's certainly that. But in terms of these sounds now, I want to kick things off. And my first thing is this movie really wanted to put forth the score. It has one track. I know the translation is like Hail Satan. I don't know.
Wow. All right.
Is it like Ave Satani? Is that the name of the track? I'm pretty sure it is.
I don't know.
Not well versed in the satanic.
It's not on my MP3 or anything like that, but like
sure.
It had a couple cool themes and tracks. I like the chanting vocals. That's so classic to me.
The choirs were fucking great in this, honestly.
Yeah, I dug it. There were once or twice where the sound effects, they were too fucking loud.
Huh.
I had my TV set adjusted to, to hear the dialogue clearly and properly and everything like that. And then there was like once or twice where, in my opinion, I felt like one or two of those sound effects kind of like, it was like really, really loud in comparison. And I was like, Jesus Christ. It was at the start of the movie. It kind of didn't do it so much at the end, but like right at the start of the movie. But
I have a question about that really quick. Do y'all think movies back then were just quieter?
100%.
Yeah, because like I was noticing as I was watching this, I had my volume at like 70, 80 for most of it. And when we watch movies, most of the time it's at like, I don't know, 20 or 30. This was just a quiet fucking movie, except for those moments where it just shocks the hell out of you.
Yeah, there's definitely been louder and louder throughout the years as like theaters have and tried to like get things louder, and it's definitely up to each theater, but just in general, audio, music, sort of everything, film has gotten louder and louder.
Yeah, I know about music.
Yeah, and trying to compete and make things sound bigger and badder in a good way. And just bigger. More compressed.
Definitely more compressed.
And real quick, Dan, before you take off here, the track was actually Ave Satani.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Okay, you're right.
By Jerry Goldsmith. I knew I remembered that. But Dan, so your take on the sounds.
I'm largely in agreement. I like the score, very great orchestral music, and as previously mentioned, the choirs and chanting and everything. I think they did very well. And, this being a very religion-dominated movie, I think the soundtrack, the score went along with that very well. And actually, I agree, and then some with the loudness of some of the sound effects. I don't know if it was my playback system or what, but I feel like I was constantly like turning up and down the volume. Like dialogue was a lot quieter, sound effects were a lot louder. And like there's a scene when they're in a graveyard and a pack of dogs starts attacking them. And I mean, like that shit was loud as fuck.
Yeah.
It's just all the dogs barking and everything. So especially certain parts, I felt like I had to turn up and down. Didn't help that I was watching it at like 1 o'clock in the morning, trying not to disturb my neighbors too much. But yeah, I think there was definitely a variety of dynamic range there.
Okay. And Nico, I know you gave us a little bit of insight, but why don't you give us the full everything?
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to give you the full everything, Justin. I think that what you two said pretty much sums it up. The dialogue sounds really nice. There wasn't anything that I thought was particularly difficult to hear. And like you both said, the soundtrack in this, Jerry Goldsmith really just did a great job on this. The choirs are fantastic. It feels appropriately moody, and it's definitely one of the movie's strengths.
One thing real quick that I did want to mention, the dialogue in this is so very British. And
well, I mean, yeah.
Well, it felt very strange to hear an American speaking that way, because there were many dialogue choices that I was like, Americans don't talk like that. I was like, that is not how an American would say it. But it was very clearly like written by and for like a British audience, you know? Like, that's how it came across to me, at least. There were a lot of dialogue choices where I was like, nah, never that. So I want to move on now, and I want to talk about the type of horror. It resurfaces every once in a while. It's the old flame of the podcast. What kind of horror is this, you know? And I want to know, what kind of horror is this really? So let's go ahead and we'll start off with you, Dan. I know you have feelings sometimes about life. And what kind of horror is this?
I don't really know. I feel like this is kind of a slow burn, religious horror, maybe some drama in there. I don't know that religious horror is actually like a genre, subgenre.
Oh, totally it is.
Okay. I feel like this is like, to me, one of the pillars of that genre. Yeah, religion horror.
Okay. I would say I'm largely in agreement with you, to be honest. I think that when you look at the religious horror subgenre, a lot of times there's the quote unquote possession movies, right? You got The Possession of Emily Rose, I think her name is.
Mm-hmm.
You've got The Exorcist. You've got The Possession of Enter Name Here. Like, there's so many of those
Exorcism of
movies.
Emily Rose is what you're thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. That's what it is. She was also possessed. But no,
She was, hey.
but like, yeah, you're right. And I feel like there's so many of those, but there's also another kind of side to this, which, you know, is covered by films like Rosemary's Baby and also The Omen, which is the whole Antichrist thing, you know, and the whole like resurfacing of the devil into the world through the vessel of, you know, this child or whatever else. And I just kind of feel like that's another big side of it. And I do think there are moments where this film kind of could be considered a slow burn for sure. I think there's not really a ton of gore, you know? There is some, you know, I mean, we do get to see like a little decapitation here and there.
Dude fucks up his arm on the fence.
Yeah. A little bit of, you know, piercing damage happens to some of the characters. One of the priests gets shafted. But I don't know.
That was the
Like-
dumbest fucking scene. Like, dude could have
Oh,
just
yeah.
stepped aside.
Bro,
I wrote that down.
No!
He
Like-
literally like watched it.
He allowed himself to get shish kebabbed.
Definitely did.
I was like, dude, you have like all the time in the world to just like take one step to the right and be like, yo, the devil's really out to get me right now. But also, like, that was wild how that church was just locked in the middle of the day.
Right?
Like, that church was just locked up, I guess. They were like, yo, the storm is too real right now.
Locked up, don't let me out.
Hey, true enough. But Nico, I want to get your take on this. Are you down for the whole kind of like religious horror subcategory? Is there someplace more prestigious you would put this maybe?
Nice. Yeah, I think that this is kind of a precursor to a lot of what we see now in prestige horror. Personally, I think that I'm going to be taking a page out of your book, Justin. I think
no.
this is more of a drama than anything else.
Ooh.
Like, I don't know if this is because, again, I came into horror much later than most people, I feel like, but I wasn't scared by this. Like, I didn't find this scary. I found that the narrative had things that were certainly, you know, ominous, but there weren't any moments where I was like terrified or just like anxious, like wondering what was going to happen and really feeling any kind of fear. It was more of just like anxiety about the fact that this dude is parenting a little demon baby.
So I will say this to that effort. So first off, in terms of the kind of being a precursor to what we would consider to be prestige horror,
Like, this is almost like the Babadook, but 50 years earlier, I would say. Or Hereditary. Like, it has a lot of the same beats, by and large, and just the broad strokes of it. Not the specifics, obviously, but, like, there's a lot of similarity in what you can see happening with just, like, family dynamics, dealing with the idea of, you know, a kind of religious being tearing people apart and how that manifests in really dramatic, tense scenes that are often trauma-laden.
yes, I agree. Those films are very derivative. But
Suck my dick, Justin.
I jest, audience, I jest. But no, I mean, I do see your point, though. And to be fair, I feel like if remade with the proper guidance and the proper framing, I could totally see this as
Not the
that.
one in 2006.
No, we don't talk about that. So I feel like, or maybe we will one day, but I do feel like, just generally speaking, I agree with you there. And to your credit about like not necessarily being super scared of it, I do think a lot of these kind of religious films, they do carry with them kind of like an extra packet of damage, if you will, if you actually believe.
Yeah.
And, you know, like certain aspects of religion or certain types of religion, you know?
Totally.
And
kind of like with our Wailing review, how you said that you were more like put off by that stuff than we were.
Yeah. Kind of similar to that. And because, for example, like for me, Antichrist stuff always kind of gets to me a little bit, you know, like, because the Antichrist is not something like unique to Christianity. Antichrist exists in, you know, like Islam as well. So like,
Yo, is there a Trini Antichrist?
bruh, let me not speak the name, bro. But like, it's one of those things where it's just kind of like, if you have, and the Antichrist itself is such a religious thing, like a possession, right? Like, you don't necessarily have to espouse faith in a religion to get scared by a possession, because possession could happen at any time, right? Like,
Right.
it could happen. But specifically the Antichrist, that is kind of specific to a certain amount of religiosity and a certain amount of belief in religion. So I think that if you don't have a lot of faith, this movie's probably not going to be, you know, all that scary to you, to be completely honest. I do think there is like an aspect of like all the shit lining up that, you know, and talking about, you know, like, by the way, kind of sacrilegious throwing in fake Bible quotes there, movie, but that's okay. And with some real ones as well.
Chalk it up to translation.
No, it was straight up fake, bro. They made that shit up. Yeah, but I could see it. Now, real quick, the movie, as Dan said, you know, it ends with the father, Robert, failing to kill Damien. You know, he doesn't do it, and the Antichrist lives. But that wasn't always the ending. There was a potential ending where Robert actually kills Damien. Would you guys have preferred that, or would you have preferred a different ending?
I'm torn. I don't always think that movies need to end good. Like, I enjoy a movie that just has like a bad ending, or like not everything is resolved. Yeah, tragic ending. So in that sense, I like it because, you know, the Antichrist was not defeated and he will live to kill more people, whatever. But I'm not sure that I'm a big fan of exactly how it ended, because I feel like it just screamed sequels to me. It very much felt like a setup for like potential sequels. And I don't know, that kind of put me off. Like, obviously, the Antichrist surviving, Damien surviving, would just by that ending alone was kind of sets itself up for sequels. But for whatever reason, this ending, I don't know exactly why, but it just was like, oh,
The
hey,
smile,
look, sequel.
the turn and smile.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That part of it kind of put me off a little bit. As a concept, I like that he survived.
All right. Nico, what's your take on it?
I feel like I would have liked it more if the kid had a personality. Damien has no characteristics whatsoever. I could not tell you what he is like as a person, aside from the fact that he is Satan incarnate. Like, there are no real moments dedicated toward establishing what he's like as a person. And so because of that, all the terror that we see is incidental, because there's all this kooky shit happening where, oh man, the fucking glass jar just fell on the ground and what's that? Oh, mom fell again? I mean, beans. Like, you know that he is at least in some way culpable for this, but there's never any moment where Damien is allowed to be anything but a plot device, I feel like. So in that way, I feel like it's a little bit unsatisfying, and I would have rather there been a moment where, you know, he dies.
I kind of feel like this could just be me. I would have taken a mix. So I would have taken it if he'd have stabbed Damien with the first one, but the cops kill him before he can complete it. So basically the Antichrist is reborn.
Interesting. I could see that.
I also like how he's like, God forgive me, and then the police show up. This is not what I asked for.
Nah, bro, like, listen, this guy was dumb, okay? Man, there were so many things I would have done. First off, I would not have wasted no time.
Nope.
Like, I would not have wasted any time. Like, I would have immediately, like, as soon as we were, like, in the church, I'd have stabbed him.
Yep.
I'd be like, that's first things first. Like, if you really honestly believe that this is the Antichrist, good game, bro. Fucking good game. Like, we're not playing this anymore. Like, you gotta go. Now, I want to also quickly speak on the film's legacy. So we know that there were a bunch more movies like this, but I feel like this movie also just kind of generally put forth a lot of ideas into the general populace, you know, like obviously people knew about the Antichrist, but I feel like this movie made the Antichrist, like it kind of inserted that into like pop culture, you know what I mean? And the whole like fixation on the number of the beast 666, like a lot of people know about that through this film.
Mm-hmm.
And just generally speaking, so does anyone have any words about the movie's legacy? Just generally, like, what's the effect of this movie? You know, why is this so highly rated? Why do people still watch it? Why did we watch this?
I feel like this movie is sort of one of the pillars of the sort of religious horror. It's not necessarily one of my favorites or anything. Like, I don't personally put it on that high of a pedestal, but I just think it's a well done movie that does a good job of diving into the religion aspect of it and a lot of the, I don't want to say lore, but I guess
It's
lore.
It's lore.
Yeah, it's lore.
And kind of like diving in and, like you said, the 666 numbers and everything. And I feel like even outside of the horror genre, we can see some influences. Like, I kind of got some like Da Vinci Code kind of vibes as well.
Sure enough.
Yeah.
Just, you know, that kind of religion aspect and that deep culty religious feel, I feel like kind of permeated across genres too.
Nico, any other thoughts you want to add to that pot?
I want to echo everything that Dan said, and I feel like we're doing that a lot this episode, so bear with us, listeners. But I think this is really just one of the fundamentals in the genre as far as establishing these sort of figures within horror. Like, have there been other religious movies before this? Yeah, totally. Are there going to be more after this? Absolutely. And I think there are ones that did this better, but this has, I think, a legacy really just because of how terrifying it was when it first came out. This is one of those things where I am inevitably looking back on it with, 2022 vision. And this isn't something that is, in my opinion, as good as, like, I don't know, The Conjuring or even like The Exorcist from a, similar time period. But it's got such lasting power because of how, I think, profoundly it affected audiences at the time, because they hadn't really seen something like that done as well as yet.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. I think this does have similarities, again, to Rosemary's Baby, but you're right. It's like different.
Yeah.
And I don't think they quite had that. I think for me, this is a benchmark. Like any movie that has any similar themes, people always talk about The Omen.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to have something about a possessed kid without talking about The Omen. You're just not going to.
Yeah.
Like, this and The Exorcism is kind of like the staples of the genre. And I do think that you can literally look at pretty much any movie that has to do with, specifically Christianity in a horror setting, and this is going to come up.
I mean, fuck, look at the hit series on Amazon, Good Omens. Like, it's this, but a fucking sitcom. It's great. It's honestly fantastic. Not horror at all, but it's the same story, same beats, same everything.
And once again, people can see that hit series on Amazon.
On Amazon. No sponsor.
Okay, no sponsor.
When did
no
that
sponsor.
come out? Because that was a book.
Yeah, by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett.
Yeah, that was a good book.
I read the first 5 pages.
Oh, yeah?
I read the next 5 pages.
Well, there you go. And we kind of osmosised one day, and we both read 10 pages as a result.
Oh, okay.
We have like a bit of the introduction and nothing else.
And that's about it.
Well, there's something that, at many times in my life, I've saved myself.
Oh,
And I saved myself for this trivia section because I didn't, ruin myself with these impure thoughts of the trivia section.
oh, okay.
But I know that you two have swam in the deep currents of the dirty, dirty trivia section. Unleash the wave upon me. I want to hear about this batshit trivia because I'm sure it's been hyped up enough. I want to know. What's so crazy about this trivia section?
I'll get it started. This is another part of why I think this film has such a legacy, is because of all the crazy shit that was happening with it.
Like what?
So there was a religious advisor who came on before the film even started production and like warned the director and cast, like, you got to know what you're getting into. And over the course of the production, there were multiple trips to and from London by plane, and I think it was like 3 or 4 planes that were carrying either the director and cast or just like various members all got struck by lightning. There was multiple restaurants that quite literally fucking blew up minutes before the cast either left or arrived.
Wait, minutes before they left?
Or arrived. I mean, shut up. That doesn't make, that's not how time works. Minutes before they got there or minutes after they left.
Okay. I feel you.
You know what I mean? Shut up, words. And one thing that was just, I think, the most tragic is our lead here, Gregory Peck, his son committed suicide right at the beginning of this production. And that's just like some of the shit that was going on.
That sounds pretty bad.
Mhm.
Dan, is that the trivia? Is there anything else to add, or is that the...
That's mostly the batshit crazy stuff. There's also like a couple other things. Like I was reading that the special effects artist, John Richardson, he was actually injured and his girlfriend was beheaded on an accident of a different film set.
Jesus!
Yeah, and that scene where the lightning strikes in the middle of the garden, they had a actual moment in real life where, I forget which actor it was nearby, but there was like shortly after they shot that scene, it happens like again. Just like immediately shot for shot, like, oh, this is great. Clearly someone's pissed off that we're doing this.
Yeah. And that's the thing, man. Like, if I was involved in this movie and this shit started happening and making a movie about the Antichrist,
I'm out.
I would get the fuck out, never doing film again. I'm out of here. Like, no, hell no. Hell no. So, like, I was reading about all this stuff and I had to, like, cross-reference it. I was like, there's no way all of this shit is real. Like, one of these things maybe, but, like, all of this, I couldn't believe it. And like I found like multiple articles and stuff, and people, sometimes I found slightly like conflicting or slightly like different versions of it. But like apparently like a lot of this shit did actually happen.
So I lied.
Oh.
Color me fucking shocked.
I did allow myself...
You heathen.
It didn't mean anything, okay? But I did have 1 or 2 quick forays into trivia myself. Didn't see any of that stuff. But this is because I looked it up on a completely different level. But apparently the character of the nanny, so this was one of those where basically they didn't necessarily want to have like a, like a dead kind of ringer for like, oh, like this is something satanic or this is something going on. I guess they wanted to leave like a little bit of wiggle room that, oh, like maybe this is not satanic, like maybe this is just in Robert's head or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently Mrs. Baylock, the nanny, like they were like, oh man, she's so over the top, like maybe we don't need her in the movie. But they liked Billy Whitelaw so much and they liked her performance so much that they just said fuck it and they kept the character in.
I'm glad they did it because I liked her.
Yeah.
Fun fact about Damien, the thing that director Richard Donner said got the kid the job was when they were filming the scene in the car where they're headed towards the church and he just starts fighting like crazy and beating the shit out of his parents. He like full ass kicked the director in the balls and he was like, that's what made me decide to pick him.
This kid knows how to beat the shit out of somebody.
Yeah.
I want that one.
And one other thing I did want to talk about real quick was it was a direct choice in this one to not have anything like really overtly, again, satanic. So like no, as they put it, no like witches' covens or like devil's hooves or anything like that.
There wasn't even a jump scare in this.
No.
True.
Do you think the film is better for that?
I don't know.
I think it's hard to say because it would have been a just qualitatively different movie if it was. something that takes this idea and really runs with the more horrific aspects of the genre would be something like The Exorcist, which is, again, why I think this is more of a drama that's supposed to make you think about all this and make you really anxious, thinking like, oh, is this really the work of, the deceiver, the defiler? Or is it just, the most unfortunate of fucking happenstance?
Fair. So now it's time for the what would you do? Now, we're going to play a quick game here, and it's going to be, when do you believe that the kid is the Antichrist? So in this particular scenario, we are all Robert, and we are basically trying to determine, whether the kid is the Antichrist. So first thing I got to bring up here is when the kid goes to the church and he starts screaming and doesn't want to go into the church. Does that raise any suspicions to you at that point in time?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? What do you do? What's your next step? Take him to the church still?
I can't remember. At that point, was Robert told that he was the Antichrist by then?
No, the new nanny was there and she was trying to convince him not to take him to the church. I think that was the only real hint we'd had at that point.
Right. The priest had not been very clear at that point in time that his kid was the Antichrist. The priest told him more clearly afterwards.
Okay.
He didn't bury the lead for very long.
Right. I don't know that I would jump to Antichrist. Oh, you're the Antichrist. But I definitely would think that something's up because my kid wasn't sick. His wife is even yeah, he no fever, he feels fine. There's nothing wrong with him. So that would definitely raise some eyebrows, but I don't know that I'd go straight to the Antichrist.
See, I would do kind of the IHOP breakfast sampler, but with religions. Yeah? I would take this kid to a mosque. I would take this kid to a temple. I would take this kid to any kind of religious site and see if he had similar reactions, just to narrow down the possibilities of what the fuck's going on.
See, I feel in accordance with our Pokemon theory, it's got to be one of the, three big monotheistic religions. So probably would have the same adverse reaction to hitting up, a mosque or a masjid or a synagogue as well. Mm-hmm. These places would probably not be very conducive, but other spots may not have the same effect, So there is certainly that to think about. Now, let's say your wife tells you about some shit where she took the kid to the zoo and all the fucking animals either ran away or attacked him. What does that make you think?
That's probably where I would start believing, especially even though I still don't think at that point the priest had really come out and for real said it. But then when I kind of think about, this priest was wilding out the other day, when I combine that with all the other shit, I think that's when I would start thinking along the Antichrist lines or satanic of some sort anyways.
Mm-hmm. Now, would the priest dying have any special reaction to you? Would you be like, oh no, or would just be like, that's unfortunate?
No, I would definitely feel some kind of way about that.
Yeah.
And last but not least, would you have done anything different towards the end?
Yeah, I would have fucking stabbed the kid.
Well, that's fair. Would there be any other different actions you would take? He goes to discover Damien's mother and all this other stuff. It's kind of inconsequential at the end of the day because he still goes to Megiddo anyways to speak to Buchenhagen, who the priest told him to talk to in the first place. So he could have totally shortcutted that and maybe saved his wife.
Yeah.
That's probably the one thing I would have done. I would have just followed what the priest told me. Anything different you guys would have done at the end?
There's a part where the priest tells him that his wife is pregnant and Damien is going to kill the baby and the mother.
Yep.
A couple minutes later, his wife is like, oh, I'm pregnant. I want to get an abortion. And he's like, no. And he's really against it because he thinks that getting the abortion is going along with the plan of killing the baby that Damien wants to do or whatever. I feel like that's dumb because there's a difference between you aborting the baby and Damien killing the baby. Those are two different things. The end might be the same. The result might be the same, but Damien killing a baby is different than having an abortion.
It's active versus passive voice. The baby was killed versus I killed the baby.
Right. So I feel like I would have been yes, let's have this abortion so that Damien cannot kill you and the baby. Right.
Just beat him to the punch.
I see. Now, I want to talk about the critical review. So first off, give me a guess. Give me a guess here. Where do you think the score sits for this one on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm going to say high 90s.
I'm going to say like mid-90s.
You're both wrong.
Oh.
So this has got an 86% fresh from critics on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay.
And this is sitting at an 80% from the audience. So why don't you go ahead, give me your favorite scene, just quick general thoughts about the movie, and then what your final score is.
I think my favorite scene in the movie is honestly just the first scene at the party where the first nanny hangs herself, just because I was not fucking expecting that. That took me by surprise. That was the one moment that really, truly took me by surprise in this movie, and I just shout outs to that. I wish I liked this movie more. I really do. This is one of those that I was really hyped up on watching and was looking forward to just for the legacy factor and it being one of the big names in the genre. But I don't know. I didn't dislike the movie. I just didn't like it nearly as much as I thought I did. I feel bad saying this, but I'm going to give it a 65.
Okay.
Well, I'll go next. I think my favorite scene in the movie was probably the part where they go to the Italian monastery and the one priest is there and he's like all fucked up from having like, you know, assisted the devil and like turning his back on God and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that because it was kind of one of those scenes where, you know, like scripture kind of blends with reality and you can't really tell what's what anymore. And he's all like writing down the names of like mysterious grave sites and stuff like that. Like that was cool. I really dug that scene a lot. I thought the movie was somewhat lengthy, but it's a classic. This is one of those movies that I don't take any joy in watching, but it's not because I dislike the movie. It's just because I don't like the ending. But it's a great movie, though. I think it's a great movie. I'm going to give it an 80%. I think it's a classic. I think it's something that's going to stand the test of time because it has. So that's where I have it at. But Dan, you're last up on this here adventure.
I think my favorite scene is when the photographer finally really sits down and talks with Robert and shows him the pictures with like kind of foreshadowing the deaths that are about to happen to those people in the pictures. I just thought that was kind of cool, and just that sort of reveal and the beginning of that sort of mystery story arc sort of tracking down all the history and whatnot. That was probably my favorite scene. I kind of agree with both of you. I thought this was well, on Justin's side anyways, I thought this was like a solid movie. It's a classic, as we've said. I think it did most things right. It checks all the boxes, great score, great cinematography, just kind of great everything all around. But on Nico's side, I feel like it was almost a little lackluster sometimes. Like on paper, it works really well, but I feel like it was lacking like a special sauce a little bit. So I'm going to give it an 80 because I thought it was pretty solid, but some sauce missing.
Okay. And real quick before we get into it, how about that decapitation scene though?
Yeah.
That was so fucking goofy.
I guess they must not have had a better way to do it, but they like when the head gets chopped off, it's like a very, very obviously fake, like mannequin or dummy head or something like that gets chopped off. So it was kind of goofy, but at the same time, I was like, oh shit, they chopped his head off. But is this going to get a recommendation from us?
I would say so, yeah. Even though I didn't have the best time with it, it's still a really good movie.
Okay. I agree.
Same.
But Nico, I take it from your score, it's not going to be getting the golden seal from you.
No, I thought was going to be one of those ones that just transcends the time that it was made in, kind of like, Alien and stuff, but it's just not in the cards for me. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. To be fair, I wasn't going to give it the golden seal
Probably
anyways.
wasn't either.
Yeah.
So we're all in accordance there. Any last words before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, just really quick. We talked about the decapitation scene being goofy. The other thing that was really goofy is when Damien actually attacks his dad and like gets up on his back. I've never been able to take those scenes seriously whenever some little tiny fucking goober just climbs up on top of a clearly like full-ass grown adult and is like the one controlling the encounter. Like, no, fuck off. That's not how this works.
It always goes back to Chucky for you, huh?
It does. It does.
Yeah,
And it
right.
can't. No, it's dumb. Just kick him.
Good times, bro. But yeah, so if you agree with anything we've said here, or if you disagree and want to let us know, hit us up on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. Don't open that door. Plus, if you want to check out this or any other episode we've ever done, check out our website. That's dotdhorror.com. But till then, take care of one another. Definitely look out for any bad omens in your life. And as always, dear listener, don't open that door. Bye.